Good morning. I am live from a hotel in Nashville, Tennessee. So I think everything is working fine. I'm looking forward to this. So I am plugged into the hotel's Ethernet and I am ready to answer some real estate questions. So I apologize for not having these real fancy lights behind me or anything. But yeah, let's see here. So far, we've only got one person on the live stream. So thank you for being on here. I don't know if you have any real estate questions. Until somebody posts a question, I suppose I will just blabber about. Okay, so two other people just hopped on, and yeah, I am in Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm hoping that this actually works. I have no idea how stable this internet connection is or how laggy it might be. So if it gets too laggy, just type it in the comments, let me know, and we might have to cut it short. But hopefully that's not the case. I've been testing the network by listening to music videos on YouTube. I started with the Safety Dance from Men with Hats. And to be honest, that's the only song I did, but I played it like 3 or 4 times. That song has really been hitting me deep lately. It's been speaking to my soul. So let's see here. As far as real estate stuff goes, to update you guys on my past week, we have finished some of these rehabs that we have under renovations. I think we still have, we had 15 out, and 2 of them are so close to being complete, so we might as well just count those off. So we're making progress on those. We closed on that package of 20 last Friday. Everything went well. We were able to make contact with all the existing residents. One person put in their 30-day notice, and then everyone else is pretty happy. We've got a lot of work orders in, and I'm really impressed at how smooth that transition is. So we actually are buying one more property today. That'll put us at 131, and that one is already rented out as well. We knew that we were purchasing that, so we went ahead and advertised it to some people that we thought might be interested. And sure enough, they were. So they are moving in tomorrow, and that's pretty exciting. All right, let's see. Well, this might be a little bit boring if nobody has any questions. I am dealing with something new for the first time, and that is termites. So I've never messed with termites before. I've never had a property that has had them. And one of the properties that we just closed on, we did not do termite inspections on all 20 of them. That would have been a significant amount of money to do that. So we are having those treated, and we should be good. I don't know how much damage they could possibly do, and this might just be me not knowing what I'm talking about. But fortunately, the property that are claiming that they have them, the inspector hasn't been out there, the termite pest control person. So the person that has gone out there hasn't gotten back with us yet, but it's on a slab. So I think I'd be a lot more nervous about termites in properties with basements, but the foundation can't take too much of a hit. So it might just be a complete wood problem, but I guess it's always a wood problem. There's just no fear of falling here on this one. And that's you're pretty much up to speed. So other than that, on our portfolio side, we're really taking a deeper look into our systems and processes. And now that we've taken everything in-house, from the leasing aspect to the property management, all things. Now we're really starting to monitor the metrics. We're going to take a strategic pause on acquiring properties for a little bit. This is the first time in probably 2.5 years that after we close on the property today, we will have no more properties under contract. So that's a first for us. So we'll see what happens. It's a funny feeling not having any properties that we are about to close on. Now that I've got you guys caught up with all of the things that are going on with us, let me try and think about some good questions that I have been asked over the past week, since nobody is asking any questions yet. Let's see. I think a lot of people are under the impression that in order to get a good deal, or when you're first starting out in real estate investing, it's most advantageous to purchase a property that is a foreclosure or somehow distressed. And while there is a lot of equity or potential for equity in these properties, I would say it's probably not the greatest of places to start if you are completely unfamiliar with all things real estate investing. If you don't have like a network of contractors, if you don't have like a mentor that you look up to, if you don't have somebody that you can reach out and ask entirely too many questions for, I think rehab projects are a little bit too much for the first time people, unless you have some sort of skill set in carpentry or doing a lot of the work yourself. That might be a little bit more manageable, but just getting into real estate and starting with distressed properties, I don't necessarily think that that's a good idea. I think it would be best to get something that might just need like paint, maybe new flooring, something very easy. Maybe a property that has like a dated kitchen or bathroom that you could put a resident in, and everything is still functional. I think that would be the way to start. So I have deterred a couple of people from rehabbing properties as their first. I know I've said this a couple times in the live stream already, but I would say my brother and I had around 22 or 23 properties prior to rehabbing our first one. Termites are a huge issue here in Georgia. Yeah, I've never run into them here in Ohio before. This is the first time. So I know I have seen properties that have termite damage, and I know if you speak with the people that treat termites, they always say things like it's a matter of when, not if. So we'll see. I'll keep everybody posted on how much damage it actually does. But hopefully not much. Hopefully not much, especially since it's on a slab. I've got a lot of hope. It's a brick exterior property too. So I think it was built in like the 60s, maybe. It looks newer, but it's on a slab and it's a brick exterior. So I think, and I'm hoping that it's just like perhaps maybe some studs that might be going down with the termites. Hey, Veronica, that is a really good question. What is your icon? What is that? Is this some sort of game? Are you a scientist? Are you explaining evaporation? Hey, Tolu. I'm happy to see you on here. I'm looking forward to hearing more of the tales of Texas, your Texas tales of getting outbid. We use Appfolio. Appfolio is extraordinarily helpful. And so I did probably about 5 days worth of research prior to getting signing up with Appfolio. And at first, all of the people that I had reached out to either used Buildium or Appfolio. And the people that used Buildium said that at some point they are going to switch over to Appfolio. Appfolio does have like that 50 property minimum. So a lot of times people start on Buildium, and then once they cross that 50 property threshold, they will go over to Appfolio. I like Appfolio. I think it has a lot of really awesome features that these other softwares do not. However, I recently learned about Rent Manager, and the key thing that Rent Manager has that I wish Appfolio did, and it might just be a matter of time for Appfolio, but Rent Manager actually allows you to send letters through the United States Postal Service just by clicking a button. Now, it's, of course, kind of farmed out to like a third-party service that does these things, but it's like 79 cents per letter. So that would save me a decent amount of time. Like after we bought this package of 20 properties, I went around and taped like welcome letters to our management company on these doors. And if I could have just clicked a button and sent physical copies of these letters, then I most certainly would have done that. So I would say Appfolio and Rent Manager are probably the ones that I would recommend. If you have less than 50 properties, I would probably likely recommend Buildium or apartments.com. I have a couple of friends that have just a handful of properties, and they're very satisfied with apartments.com. And I think apartments.com is making a pretty decent effort to become a better property management solution, because especially since they just recently acquired Cozy. I am currently, Tolu, in Nashville, Tennessee. So that is the reason that my laptop is shaking. I don't have the camera that I normally do or the microphone that I normally do. And I've got this laptop sitting on top of my book bag so that it is a little bit more sturdy and eye level. When I first logged on, you guys would have been like down here looking up at me, and I didn't want that. I don't think anybody does. It's very unnatural. So let me know. Keep me posted on how this goes. If it gets laggy or buggy, just let me know. I don't know. I don't know how much I trust about this connection. Tolu, have you tried PropStream yet? And forgive me if we have already talked about this, but I'd be curious as to how helpful PropStream is in the Texas markets as well. And you know what? While we're here, let me go ahead and post this in the chat, even though it's in the description. Oh man! And as I was over there, I saw the comment from you, Jeb. This is awesome. I really like each time people reference the kids on the bicycle or the grown men on kids' bicycles. I've seen that on 3 occasions in the last 2 weeks. Me and my wife laughed and left the neighborhood. Okay, so important note about this, because I was with somebody that pointed out or tried to like send me a picture of a grown man on a bicycle, and I just want to point on a kid's bicycle. I just want to point out the difference, though, because BMX bikes, those tiny little BMX bikes, do not count. So make sure that you, differentiate between the ones that have like the pegs on them and are grown men normally ride them and get paid a lot of money to ride them. Those are completely different than like a grown man on like a pink or light purple little girl's bicycle, or like a Superman bike. Those are very funny. The other thing that I really dislike seeing, if you are in a neighborhood and there are 4-wheelers, ATVs, or those tiny, what do they call them, like mini bikes, like clown motorcycles. They're just like super tiny, like the clown cars, but the motorcycle version. I would stay away from those neighborhoods as well. Generally, and I get that this is now, like if you're in the country or kind of far out in like a more rural environment, then I think it's probably okay. But every time I've seen that in the inner city, it's indicative of a pretty rough neighborhood. I am in Nashville, Tennessee. I am at a very short conference, so I'm, for whatever reason, speaking in it as well. So I'm pretty nervous about that. Can we add grown men walking pit bull on a regular rope? Oh man, yeah. I think that's doable. I don't know. I go back and forth. I don't know. It's dogs in general are I'm not anti-dog, but it takes a lot of work to keep up with animals, especially in like the inner city on these very small plats of land. These dogs are often larger than the space that they're given. So I don't think a dog can be healthy and run around as much as they're supposed to in some of these properties. It's pretty sad. I think I wish it was regulated on like the number of animals you could have or the number of like square feet or acreage you have to have in order to have a dog. I think I see a lot of dogs kind of abused in the uh, D, C, even low B areas. And I'm sure it happens in the A areas as well. I just don't have any exposure to those because we don't have any properties there. You're not on uh, you're not on PropStream yet. You should give it a shot. I'm sure there has to be some sort of benefit to it, especially in such a competitive market. Because one of the things that PropStream does very well is like the pre-foreclosures. Um, and it also has a filter where you can search for distressed and vacant properties. So that might be just a little bit helpful. But at the same time, if everybody in the market has PropStream, then you're back to an even playing field. Well, what else you got? We got 7 people, so we're growing. I think normally it's about like an hour to an hour and a half in that we hit like the 20s or 30 mark. So this is pretty exciting. Now, Jeb, are you already looking for? You know what? Now that I see the helmet, I think I'm getting you confused with somebody else. You are about to get your realtor's license, and your wife is already a realtor. You do not have any rentals yet. Is that right? I think I'm remembering appropriately. All right. Well, before some additional questions roll in, I'm going to try to think of some other issues that we could speak on. I've said this for about 3 or 4 weeks straight. I definitely owe a final Project Firehouse video. It is completed and it is now rented out. We rented it out for $1,200 a month, so I'm pretty happy about that. When we purchased it, there was the fire and all, but prior to that, it was rented out for I think like $1,100 per month, and that person had lived there for 5 to 7 years. Have you purchased property sight unseen? Yes. Yes, I have. I do that quite often. It's not necessarily something that I would advocate people do. I would say that if it's your first couple of properties, you probably should not do that. I think it would be entirely too risky. We have a really good team of contractors, and um, we kind of have to keep them busy. So, well, you know what? Let me walk this back and let me divide it up into 2 different avenues, right? So, if the property is vacant, I probably would not buy it sight unseen. The only time I've purchased properties sight unseen are when it's a good deal. The numbers make sense. So we're able to buy it for 40 to 60% of the ARV, and it's currently occupied. And if it's currently occupied, and the current owner is able to show me that they regularly make payments by like just their ledgers or their rents received receipts or something like that, then I generally don't mess with it. And then because we already know that the property is habitable, if the property is habitable, then and you have a person that regularly pays, I think that very much so lessens the like exposure or risk of that transaction. I don't think I would purchase a vacant property sight unseen, because I think that would just be me not doing the due diligence that I should be prior to purchasing a property. And if it's vacant, you really have no idea what's inside it. If it's a foreclosure, then you kind of have to purchase it, not necessarily sight unseen, but without getting a full inventory of all the things that are needed on the interior. So I would say probably about 40 to 50% of the properties that we've purchased over the past year that are already occupied have been sight unseen, because we've been able to just verify that the people paid. And then, work orders are inevitable. So if we get a good discount on the properties, one of the first things that we do after we close is we make contact with the people that are currently living there. We get them set up on our management system, and then we just go ahead and ask them to fill out a work order for any of the repairs that they would like to be made. So sometimes people come up with nothing and they say that they are fine. And then other times people will submit a real laundry list to us. But, generally it's just about one day's worth of like punch list items, things that have broken over time. And I think it's very important when you buy a property that already has someone living there, that you kind of go above and beyond and just get the relationship started off on the right foot. Because, everybody is kind of fearful as soon as they hear the property that they live in is about to sell. They start thinking, is my rent going to go up? This other person never fixed anything. This person isn't either, and they're going to raise my rent. So there's just, a lot of uncertainty, and where there is uncertainty, there is fear. So kind of calming that down and trying to make them a really big fan of you from the beginning, I think is really smart. We had to do a lot of that whenever we took property management in-house, because they had been probably mismanaged for quite some time. There were a lot of repairs that we didn't know about that we needed to go about and fix. So I would say that's a really good idea, especially if you buy it sight unseen and you want to make sure that there isn't any deferred maintenance, because deferred maintenance will always get you. I don't think there's any real way to save money by deferring maintenance. Last year, we didn't catch this, but there was a bunch of like gutter issues and groundwater issues on one of the properties that we owned, and we never caught it. And I guess over years and years of it doing this, even before we owned it, the basement wall ultimately collapsed. So fixing the gutters and diverting the groundwater, generally that costs about $1,500 to $3,000, depending on if you trench out the downspouts away from the house. Replacing the basement wall cost us about $16,000. So that was not ideal. And I think that is the first example that I can think of where deferred maintenance just really doesn't pay off. It really doesn't make any sense. You often talk about the 2% rule on your properties. What is the lowest you would go? That's a really good question. So our business model was largely based on the 2% rule, especially when we got started. And the reason it is hold on, a friend of mine is, the reason is we often borrow money from friends and family for first position mortgages at 10 or 12%. So let's just say it's the higher, it's 12%. And let me just run through some fictitious numbers. I kind of explained this on a lot of the Deals Explained videos, but let's run through it real quick because that would be fun. So if I buy a property for $40,000, it rents out for $800. That is something that I want to purchase. Now, that $40,000 includes purchase price plus renovation costs. So I will borrow maybe $45,000. Let's just say 40 to keep things simple. So I'll borrow $40,000 from a friend or family member. Now that's going to be secured with a first position mortgage on the property. So that's at 12% interest only payments on a monthly basis. So that 1% per month since we're doing 12%, 40,000, that's $400 per month. So now you've got $400 that is immediately going to pay back the loan, and then you have $400 left to pay all the other expenses. So the 2% rule makes it possible to pay 12% interest only and still have money left over, because generally taxes are about $50 to $60 per month. So that takes it down to say $350. Insurance might be another 50 or 60. So let's take that down to $300. And then, you've got your 10% capital expenditures and repairs, maintenance, whatever you want to, budget for that. But you still have $300 left over to take care of anything that might come up with the property. So you can borrow money interest only at 12% and still have a positive cash flow of like $300 per month after your mortgage payment, interest, insurance, and taxes. So that is why we really stuck to that. And also because it's just possible to do in our market. Now, since we have partnered with a couple new lenders that give us money for cheaper than 12%, we have started purchasing properties in nicer, I don't want to say nicer areas, in a school district that is more favored than Dayton City schools. So we have currently purchased a few 1% and a few like 1.2 to 1.4% properties. And I don't necessarily think that we're going to do too much of that, but we definitely wanted to balance out our portfolio because your smaller credit unions are really good at giving you loan amounts for very, very small. But one of the issues that we're still working on and that we've come up against a lot that is probably going to be the hardest thing for us to deal with is some of these banks have minimum loan amounts. So oftentimes it's like $75,000 minimum loan amount or $125,000 minimum loan amount. So all of our portfolio most of our portfolio is excluded from banks that have those requirements, because almost all of our properties are less than $125,000. Now, here lately, because the market is appreciating so much, a lot of the properties that we have purchased for $30,000, $45,000 are now appraising for $75,000 to $95,000. So we definitely are now able to work with the banks that have the $75,000 minimum, but nonetheless, that's still an issue that we come up with. So in balancing out our portfolio, buying some of these higher valued properties, now when we do like a blanket refinance, like we did in January, we can probably come closer to getting an exception on that minimum loan amount because we have X number of properties that are, above that $125,000 mark. JJ, happy to hear from you, man. You went out of town. Are you back now? How did your tenant handle? Did you decide to tell your tenant, your resident, that you were going out of town, or no? With your single family rentals, do you have your tenants pay all utilities, even water? Yes. Yes, I do. Now, water is in most places that I have heard of. Now, keep in mind, Montgomery County, Ohio is where 99% of our properties are. So I'm only speaking about what I know. But water is one of those bills that sticks with the property. So if we have somebody that's living there and they stop paying their utility bills, the gas, the electric, that'll follow them. They can move out and those bills will not stay with the property. But the water is supplied by the city. I guess at some point the municipality said, you know what, the water, sewer, trash bill is always staying with that property. So if there's a massive delinquent bill and that person moves out, then the owner is now stuck with that massive delinquent bill. So I know there are people out there that keep all of the water bills in their name and then assess those charges to the resident as they pay them. But I think that is more legwork. And I think paying somebody to keep up with that and make sure that all of those get paid are, I think it's cheaper from a scalability perspective, just to go ahead and have them put those in their name and run the risk of getting stuck with a large bill rather than paying somebody to make sure that these are collected, assessed, and all that properly. So yes, all utilities is what they pay. And I think this is one of the main reasons that I really love single family rentals. And I say that because, you know, when I was looking at the multifamily properties, this was a while back now, but some of these properties have like $30,000 and $40,000 water bills, and that is just a little bit too much. And also on the single family homes, you know, kind of like you're saying, they pay all utilities. They are responsible for all of the lawn care, all of the, you know, maintenance things, not the maintenance things, but like snow removal, all of that. So there's generally, most people get like a little bit of pride of ownership. They pretend it's their house. They keep everything very nice. And I just don't see that same kind of pride of ownership throughout the demographic that rents apartments. Great question, REI TV. All right, we're at the bottom of the comments section, and we're about 36 minutes in. There are 11 people on here, so I'm very excited. It's a very kind of like a classroom of folk. Every time I do these live streams, I like to imagine that we're in a classroom setting. And 11 people in one place is a lot of people. That's a decent show out. All right. We are leaving next month. With your feedback, we plan to info them. Nice. That's really cool. Man, that coffee is cold now. Those tiny cups don't stay too cold. Let's see. Let me put this disclaimer up here. There we go. Just to remind everybody that I don't know what I'm talking about. And there we go. Let's go ahead and post any questions you got in the chat. I've got good news. We are putting the finishing touches up on that app, the rental calculator app. So I'm really excited about it. I've downloaded like a test version. Let's see if I can show you guys. I don't think so. The Ingram rental calculator is what it's going to be called. So pretty pumped. Finishing touches should be done within the next month. That's really exciting. My brother wants to use my credit to buy his house. He wants me to attach him to one of my credit cards. Thoughts? Let's see here. So I messed up my credit a while back, and that's the first time that I realized that I should probably figure out exactly what goes into a credit score. So I made one video about that, and I think the attaching you to one of his credit, or attaching him to one of your credit cards, I think they call that like the piggybacking method. So all of your good history, he will immediately get credit for if you add him to the account. I don't think that's a bad idea. And so long as you don't give him a card, I don't really think there's any risk to that. So I don't think I would be opposed to doing that for someone, especially family, if they asked me. But that's totally a personal decision. Because, you know, if you got the card mailed to you, you never gave him the card. It's not like he could use it, so you would never be out of any money. Even though he gets credit for your history, there's not anything that he could do that would impact your score. And you could take them off at any given point if it ever got weird. I think the only risk that you run is, in theory, maybe, I don't know about this, but if you make him like the authorized signer, which is what you would need to do in order for him to get his card, I guess if you didn't give him a card and you also didn't trust him, then I guess there's probably a potential that he could call the company and get a new card sent out to him to his address or whatever. But I don't know. I think I would probably do it. Yeah. No real downside, won't necessarily cost you anything. And I don't think there's any potential blowback. Now, there is potential blowback on him because if you, crank up that particular card's utilization for a second, it would potentially tank his score a little bit. But yeah, I think I'd probably do it. And I've had people when I thought I really messed up my score. Fortunately, I was able to fix it. But I had my parents and my grandmother actually add me to one of their credit cards. So now I have credit history all the way from like the 1980s, which I think is pretty crazy. All right, what you got? And for those of you just joining, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm pretty excited about it. I don't have a good view, even though there's a large window there. This room overlooks the flat roof area where all the HVAC equipment is. So it's pretty loud. It's also next to an airport. All right, let's see. Is putting a contract on a house only for investment companies in real estate? No, nope. Putting a contract on the house is just like the terminology when you agree to buy it. So if a property is posted or listed to the market, like on the MLS through a realtor or whatnot, anyone can purchase it or anyone can put an offer in. Once you put a contract on purchasing that property, then now nobody can offer on that property until your contract either is successful or it falls through. So if it's successful, then it becomes your property and nobody can put offers in unless you want to sell your property. And then if it falls through, people can put offers on. So it's kind of like, let's see, what is it comparable to? I don't really know. I guess it's kind of like reserving a table at a restaurant. Nobody else can sit there unless you don't show up. Nashville is a market I'm looking at. Is that what you're doing there? No, I'm not. And I would never invest here. It's definitely booming. It's fun to look at. It's definitely fun to see. Like we stayed at an Airbnb last night before we checked into this hotel. Obviously, we're here for, my brother and I are here for a tiny little conference, the mastermind group that I have mentioned a couple times that I am a part of. We are doing that. If you want to sell a contract, I guess you can, and that's what they would be calling. That's what they would call wholesaling. So, in theory, all contracts are assignable, and you could sell your equitable interest in the contract. I think that's the phrasing that's done. I don't know. I've never wholesaled a property, and I've never had a contract and then assigned it to somebody else. So I don't know. There's a lot of people that do that. There's a lot of people on YouTube that talk about that. I don't know much about it, and I don't think I would do it. What are your top 3 qualifiers for tenants? Can you break down your must-haves and nice-to-haves? Thank you. Of course, man. Of course. I'm happy you're on here again. I'm trying to figure out, do I owe you a text message? Let me see. Yes, I do. I'm texting you right now, but not the answer to this. I'm going to answer your question too. If any of you have ever reached out to me and you have not heard a response, I'm working on it. I'm very self-conscious about it. I'm doing my best to stay on top of things. I really need to come up with a better system for responding to text messages and emails. My turnaround time is approaching. It used to be days, and then it turned into weeks, and now, unfortunately, I think we're approaching the month mark. So hopefully, I figure out something fast. So our rent qualifications are pretty standard. We don't really deviate much from it, and we really don't make any exceptions. So 3 times monthly income gross. We don't deviate from that. We verify that with pay stubs. Um, then no felonies ever. There's no time period on that. No misdemeanors in the past 5 years. It used to be no misdemeanors ever, but then we had a perfectly qualified person, and the only thing that they had was like 8 years ago. They had like an open container violation, so they were drinking a beer while driving or something. I guess they didn't even have to be driving. They could have just been in a parking lot. Um, and I thought that was even the cop in me was like, well, that's a very silly reason to not rent to somebody. So then we modified that to 5 years. So 3 times gross monthly rent, and that is gross, truly off gross, not off of the net. And then no felonies, no misdemeanors in the past 3 years, no previous evictions. There's no time period on that either. And you cannot have more than 2 accounts in collections with balances greater than $500. And that is pretty much our criteria. The reason that I excluded collections accounts lesser than $500 is I don't know why, but we started having a lot of applicants with multiple accounts and collections for like 10, 15, $150. And these are on applicants that are making $3,000 to $6,000 a month. So I just couldn't figure out why they were there. But rather than trying to solve that problem, I just decided to not look at it. And then if you have any accounts in collections, regardless of the amount, if it's for medical debt or medical expenses, we do not hold that. Like, we exclude those as well. We don't count them. I think that is really cool. And that largely stems from a personal vendetta against all medical billing people. Those silly rascals just making up numbers and adding them to your account, even 6-9 months after whatever incident. But hey, personal vendetta, and it just makes me feel good to forgive people from that. We do not take credit scores into account whatsoever. So originally, I had it set up to where anything below 500 would automatically decline somebody. However, apparently the credit scores go lower than 500. So I didn't know. I didn't know that. The lowest I've seen so far is like 440. And that was a matter of just not having credit. She had no derogatory marks on her credit report. She only had one line of credit. It was for $300, and it wasn't even utilized. So that's just like a lack of credit history rather than having, quote unquote, bad credit. So now, we accept credit scores 400 and up. So we don't look at credit scores at all. And the reason for that is exactly what we talked about earlier with RR. Most people just have no idea what goes into a credit score. And, I get it. Some people don't want to pay off small collection balances just because of the principle of it or whatever. And credit score is probably one of the main reasons that people are renters. We don't do any first-time tenants. Any hard and fast rules for you too? First-time tenants, no. That thought has never even crossed my mind. How would you verify that? Like, they just moved out of mom's house, is what you're saying? So, like, as their for their residence history, they put $0 for previous rent because they've been living with their mom. I don't know, man. I've never thought about that, and I don't think I would have to think about that as to why that would be beneficial to consider. Because I've had it both ways. I've had, of course, people that have really high expectations and want us to make like paint color choices for themselves. Yeah. Yeah, we don't redo paint and flooring to preference. That's one of the things that we've been asked by those. But a lot of people just kind of really stick to themselves. We actually have a lot of first time tenants now that I'm thinking about it that we've placed recently, and they've all been pretty laissez-faire. But I totally get where you're coming from. Thanks, man. Thanks for asking. Let's see here. Probably more single family homes. We really love that. We want to continue growing in that area. We do not flip. I took a vow to myself a while back. I don't do anything that only pays me once, and flips fits that criteria. Mobile homes, I don't really want anything to do with them, largely because they don't make up any of the infrastructure of the city. I think if we had a decent amount of trailer parks inside the city limits of Dayton, I would probably look into it. But right now, Dayton's biggest issue is the number of vacant homes and the number of deferred maintenance on the existing homes. So I get a lot of satisfaction off cleaning up the city, kind of one street, one home at a time. And, like I've mentioned before, I would say 80% of our portfolio is within like a 1.5 2-mile radius of all the other properties. So we're starting to see, like, it's starting to pay off. We're starting to see a pretty big difference in that area, and that makes me really excited. So we're going to hold what we have. We got a good thing going for us. We're not going to make any real changes. We're dipping our feet a little bit in like commercial properties. We have one like bar that we purchased that's right in the heart of our portfolio. So we are turning that into a Mexican restaurant. That's the only thing that does not fit of what we've currently been doing. Other than that, we're just going to keep rinsing and repeating. We're not going to get into apartments. I don't really have any desire to do so. I do not like 4 units or 3 units or 2 units. We just recently bought a 3 unit because it was part of that package, but that was the only reason. I think I'd be interested if it were like a 50 to like 100 unit apartment complex. I think that a lot of the issues that I really dislike multifamilies for would go away if you increase the scale or the size of the community, but I'm not sure. And so far, because that's such a competitive space and because the government's still printing a lot of money, multifamilies, investors, it's a very cutthroat market at the moment. So right now, you can get a much better deal on a single family home than you can on an apartment complex. So if apartment complexes are selling for $50,000 a unit, there's no sense in me paying $50,000 a unit if I can still buy properties for $30,000. Let's see here. What kind of financing are folks getting for single family home rentals? So, you're familiar with our model. We do private money. So we borrow money, first position mortgages, 10, 12%. When we refinance, we just refinanced 36 of them at 4.25% over 20 years. We're working with another company that says they'll give us 30-year amortization at like 5.25. So we're looking into that because that 10 years is the difference of like $2,000 per month. Pretty much just commercial terms. So there's a lot of money out there at the moment, and the people that have the money need to put it somewhere so as to not completely lose money to inflation. How do you calculate how many mortgages you can afford at once? I do not do this. So I kind of think the mindset behind this question is a little bit like we were holding the ball and we would just need to make like one adjustment to this. And that's, I'm not affording anything. Ryan Ingram is not paying for any mortgages. So we would not take out a mortgage on a property that the property couldn't pay for. So we don't purchase any homes that can't afford the underlying financing. So if I was to buy a house and it rents out for $800 a month, but the mortgage would be $900, we would not do that. All of the properties that we purchase, after all the expenses are paid, including the mortgages, there's still, you know, I mean, we haven't done a great job at some of these, like the packaged properties that were rented forever. Like there's one property that we make $30 a month on. He's been there for like 30 to 35 years, and we just haven't raised his rent. So he's still paying like 300 and something dollars a month to rent a standalone single family home. Isn't that wild? But yeah, it's not about me. I think when I talk to people and they want to get into real estate, but they haven't, one of the biggest hangups that I see people trying to make mentally is kind of this question. They only want, and I guess it's prudent at first, but they do not want to take on any mortgages that they couldn't pay for out of their own paycheck. So then once they get to 2 or 3 properties, and they realize that if for whatever reason all 4 of those went vacant at once, they wouldn't out of their monthly income be able to pay for those properties. And I think that is getting too ultra conservative if you start thinking of it from that lens, because there's a difference. It's like, are you running a business or are you the consumer of 4 homes? And if you're the consumer of 4 homes, then your ideology makes perfect sense. But if you are building a business, then it doesn't make any sense. There's always going to be some inherent risk that you're taking on that the business has to fully embody. It's not like Elon Musk could, from his monthly income, float all the operating expenses of Tesla, SpaceX, and whatever else he has going on. It's not like Bezos, out of his monthly income, could float all of Amazon's operating expenses. So you also shouldn't look at it from that standpoint. So if all of these properties go vacant at once, then there's a management issue, and you're not being a good steward of your properties. Thank you. I appreciate you asking that question. Again, it's not uncommon. I get a lot of very conservative, and I also am a huge fan of Dave Ramsey. And when I first got into real estate, I was coming in hot and heavy off the Dave Ramsey train, and I bought the first duplex that we did in cash. And I plan on building an entire portfolio in cash. And that's just, if you are building a business, then that is not the responsible way to do so. What are your current thoughts on real estate markets now, especially New York? People are saying prices are dropping, but I don't see properties that meet my numbers. I don't really have any thoughts on the real estate market outside of where I am. I think every market is so nuanced. I definitely think if I had to make some guesses on like a nationwide real estate market, then I would say the places that are most overextended are going to be the ones that correct first. I definitely think that, this pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, is definitely leveling the playing field a lot in terms of remote work. I know a lot of people that were previously based in New York or California that are now leaving because they have the ability to work remote. So now they don't have to pay the outrageous prices to live in those places. So if I were to guess on a market pullback, I would say that New York, California, all of the very, very much so overextended places are going to correct first. Places like the little old Midwest, the Rust Belt, we've been depressed for decades. We're going to be depressed for quite some time. If there would be a pullback, I don't know how it could get any lower than it already is. This past year, we've purchased properties for as low as $18,000. It didn't need any work. We immediately rented it out for $650 a month. I don't know how you could have a pullback. I don't know how that type of stuff can drop. Sure, the properties that we're currently buying for like 55 grand or whatnot, they might pull back to like 40 grand, but that's not really a big deal. What property management software do you use? Do you like it? We are looking at Appfolio. We currently have Buildium. We use Appfolio. We like it a lot. Rent Manager is the other one that I would take a good hard look at before you sign up with Appfolio. Everyone that I reached out to in our area when I was looking to make a decision used Buildium and said that once they got enough properties, they would also switch to Appfolio. So that's exactly what I did. But I would say that Rent Manager has a couple key features that I wish Appfolio did. With Rent Manager, you can create like communication sequences. So if you want to text message people on the last day of every month saying that, hey, tomorrow rent is due. If you want to text everybody saying on the 2nd, saying, hey, yesterday rent was due. And then on the 3rd day, they even have features where you can send like physical letters via the United States Postal Service directly to their house. It costs like 79 cents per envelope. And another really cool thing about Rent Manager is it integrates with the phone system and it records all of the calls. So if somebody calls you from 123 Main Street and says a whole bunch of crazy things, that phone call is recorded and can be accessed through Rent Manager. So if you've got multiple people in your office that this 123 person could have contacted, then each of those calls are recorded. And I am a huge fan of the auditable communication tracing features of these rental property features. So since we have got on with Appfolio, I do not accept any phone calls to my personal phone from like the first couple people that we have that somehow got my number. I don't accept those, and I always direct them to either text our Appfolio texting number so that it appears in that chain, or call our office. Now, Appfolio does not have that feature where it integrates with the phone system, and it also does not have the feature that sends physical letters. But those are both features that I would really love. Appfolio also does not have the communication sequence creation thing that I just mentioned, because I would love. Appfolio does have the feature where it sends out like a bulk text message saying, hey, just a reminder, rent is due on the 1st. And then I think it'll send it like 5 days before the end of the month. But it doesn't have any options to add additional lines of or methods of communication to that. And I wish it did. The work orders, I really enjoy the ease of work order. So you can add all of your contractors into Appfolio, and then once a work order comes in, I mean, all you have to do is assign it to a contractor, and then Appfolio would immediately notify them of the work order, and it'll send over all of the residents' contact information, their availability, and their description of the problem, along with any photos that they may have attached to the work order. So I think that's really slick. And then in speaking with somebody that uses Rent Manager and just kind of comparing the features toe to toe and going through our systems and processes together, just trying to build out a more robust system for ourselves and trying to take, compare notes. One of the things that Appfolio has that Rent Manager does not is, earlier when we were talking about the eligibility requirements for applicants, Appfolio has a pretty thorough, like, auto approval or declination system. So you can really fine tune that in. Like I mentioned, that if they have 2 or more accounts with balances greater than $500, it'll automatically decline them. Rent Manager does not have that. So their leasing person spends a great amount of time manually sifting through all of the applications. Good question. Would you recommend bidding high to outbid others, hoping that appraisals will be lower than you're offering? No. Nope. Real estate is pretty cool in that you don't have to overpay if you don't want to. I don't think I don't think over offering and then negotiating on the back end is a very kind tactic. I feel like that's a little bit sneaky. Hey, Cameron, I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see you back on here. For a rental property, I think $5,000. I think if it costs more than $5,000, I would take a real close, hard look at it. 3,500 on average is what we spend for remodeling a bathroom. That includes the tub, the vanity, the toilet. I mean, tubs, vanities, and toilets. If you bought all three of those things, uh, I think a tub is like $350, maybe. I think a toilet is like 150, and I think vanities might be like 150. So between those three things, you're looking at what? $650 in like the key components of a bathroom. And then like the flooring is very minimal because it's a very small space. And then like the drywall and all of that stuff, very small. So then I guess you have light fixtures, some outlets, some paint, some flooring, and a towel rod. The fan. I think those are like $50. So if you spend more than $3,500 to $5,000, somebody is making buku bucks on labor. Any pushback from the contractors on using this platform? Some of my guys can't read. I think that would be a roadblock for me. It is a growing process for sure, and there's a learning curve to it. I would say 70% of our contractors are on this platform, and I would say because we have so much work, and I think this is one of the areas where scaling gets really difficult. Is one of the things that we're trying to focus on right now is we do not want to do anything that can't also be scaled, to 10, 20, 30 times the volume. So we have recently told contractors that we will not be, delivering them, because I used to hand deliver some contractors some checks. We don't do that anymore. We have to have everybody's, W-9, and then we have to have everybody's account and routing number, and we ACH via our bank all payments, and that saves a lot of time. We are currently looking at additional software for contractors on the rehab side. On the maintenance order side, hey, if you want to pick up all these jobs and make this money, you kind of have to use this platform. So we don't have any pushback from the contractors on this. And we've had the conversations of, yes, but we are growing, and we are growing fast. And a lot of our contractors have seen our growth as well. So they understand that, they're a part of this. They are going to be kept busy, and they're always going to have work from us, if they just do these things. So it's trying to, and one of the mindset shifts that my brother and I are trying to really do is, we started this real estate investing thing as a hobby. I mean, the only reason that we did it was because we were on the phone one day and we realized that we had like we were going to have 4 kids between the two of us in college at one time. And we were baffled on how we were going to pay for that. So we said real estate might be a good idea. So then we just started buying properties, and it was always something that we just kind of did as a hobby, in addition to our work. And then it just kind of snowballed into this living and breathing business that takes a lot of energy to maintain. So we have to get organized. We have to treat everybody the same, and we have to do it in a very scalable type format. Hands down, the contractor portion. So hands down, going around, like right now we've got 15 open rehab projects. So at this point, I can't even visit all of them in one day to check the progress on those. And I really love, contractors are grown men. but they still seem to do a lot better if I go by on a daily basis. It seems like if I don't go there for like a week or only once a week, then not nearly as much progress is being made. So we generally don't like to have any more than 10 rehab projects going at one time. But we kind of fell out of that because we got some really good deals. So there's that. So we are currently looking, and I know there's like Appfolio is good for the maintenance side and handling the work orders and, handing off work orders to contractors that come in through the portal. But Appfolio is not good for like the full-blown rehab. So like the acquisition. So before a property goes into Appfolio for us, we have to acquire it, rehab it, get it rent ready. So we're currently looking for some sort of like software or solution for us to manage all of the open rehab projects going on. I would say 4. Let me count. 5. We currently have 5 guys that we keep decently busy. 5 crews of people, 5 different, general contractors and their helpers. I do my best not to. So it's not necessarily uncommon in our market for there to be like a $0 earnest money, especially because a lot of our offers are cash in 2-week with 2-week closing. So there's no inspection contingency, no appraisal contingencies, or anything like that. So kind of like as a trade-off, we do our best to not offer any earnest money. But at this point, a lot of realtors are familiar with us. If we buy a property from somebody that is not familiar with us, then we generally put down some money. Like we put down $5,000 earnest money on this package of 20 properties that we just did. Let's see. And then I think we put down, if we put down earnest money, it's generally $500. Is using a hard money lender on the first rental to buy / rehab too risky? You could be stuck holding a big bag, that's for sure. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would do your very best to find your own money and not rely on hard money lenders. I think in our market, when property values are a lot lower, paying somebody 4 points just to originate a loan is very excessive. I would not recommend anybody do that. So 4 points is 4%. So on a $100,000 property, it's $4,000. So I would say you should, would you pay yourself $4,000 to go out and find somebody that has $100,000? That has always been my philosophy. I don't consider myself, cheap most of the time, but when it comes to hard money lenders, I can't afford it. How do you find these contractors? How do you check your contractors? A lot of word of mouth. A lot of word of mouth. And then the way that I prefer to onboard a contractor is I will get like a maintenance order in or like a maintenance request for something pretty small and pretty simple. And I will give them a few work orders and just see the quality of their work and figure out, how timely, how responsive, how quick they are. And hopefully one of those work orders that I give them to kind of test them out goes wrong. And hopefully they have to go back out. And I really enjoy seeing how people respond once they have to go back out. Are they going to charge me more? Are they going to act like it's a change order? Are they going to act like they've uncovered an additional problem, or are they just going to go ahead and fix it? And if they just go ahead and fix it without charging me anything else, and say something along the lines of "we guarantee our work" or "we always stand behind our work," then they're likely going to get like a full rehab from me in the upcoming future. So as far as checking on them, I just go by each time. So most of our contractors kind of fall in the rhythm of wanting to get paid once per week, generally at the end of the week. So I just make sure when I get requests for money that the appropriate amount of work was actually completed. That's all I do. I did. And that's why I think it's really important to check work. So I would say never prepay for any work. Getting materials is one thing, but some people will say things like we need 50% upfront, which I guess is standard sometimes, but we do not do that because as well as I do, the first work that needs to be done is likely demo work. So there's no materials needed. The contractor should have all the tools they need to demo whatever it is they're about to work on. So I almost always refuse to give anyone any money up front until they are actually like ready for the materials. And actually right now we are getting kind of onboarded. We've been using Home Depot Pro account. We've had some success with that. It makes things very manageable, pretty easy. I like it. That way we never actually have to, we don't have to like hand deliver checks or anything like that. The contractors can just go get what they need. And then we have like a very easily searchable receipt bank online. I've heard that Lowe's and Menards are pretty solid too. We're in the process of getting those set up. But when I got burned, I mean, all I really did was prepay for work that was actually just never completed. Because generally we don't have 15 going on, I lay my eyes on everything prior to paying people. I think that's just because we were taken for a big amount. I mean, we were taken for about 30 grand whenever I made that mistake. Fortunately, we had enough equity in the property to cover it so that we never really felt it. We just lost our equity in that home. After refinance, we just broke even rather than cash out. But that's okay. It was a good learning curve. And this is probably the one area that I keep an eye on most diligently. For the work orders, we always confirm with the residents that whatever it is that they were complaining about was fixed to their satisfaction. So they're the ones that lay eyes on the repair work, and they're the ones that determine if everything was done well. As far as the rehab goes, I prefer to look at everything to make sure that we are on pace, on track, and that they actually did the things that we paid them for. Houses 50K to 150K are lasting only one before it's off the market. I'm going to see a 2-bedroom house in 40 minutes listed at 99K, rents for $800 to $900 a month. What would you offer? Well, if it were in my market, I would offer 45 grand, just based off the 2% rule. Your market, I have no idea. I mean, the cool thing about single family homes is they're not based on the income that they produce. So those things that you kind of told me are almost not really interdependent on each other. Interdependent. That's silly. It's just dependent. Interdependent, I think, is also a word, though. I don't know. So the single family homes, it's largely based on comps. What I would do is I would take these next 40 minutes to hop on PropStream and to put yourself together a little comp report of properties that are in similar condition. So what I've been doing lately, whenever I think a property is overpriced and I put a really low price in, now granted it's cash, close in 2 weeks, but I will actually also send over a comp report that I generated from PropStream and say, hey, I get that you want to sell it for 99, but according to these comps of properties that I've pulled that have sold within the past 12 months in similar condition, it's only worth 10 grand. If it's that low, it probably won't work out well. But yeah, I mean, if they're lasting only one day before it's off the market, I would definitely offer fast. But I also, just because a market is hot, that's not enough reason for me to overspend on a property. I get that, you want to get started, but patience, they say that it's a virtue. It's hard for me to embody patience, but being immediately upside down in a property is not a good place to be. What grade of materials do you put in the rentals? Not bad, but not high end. So, I mean, we put in decent cabinets. We put in decent flooring. We put in the 4 to 6 millimeter LVP most places. Some of the contractors that we have, they store materials that they find when they get good deals on them. I mean, we definitely put in quality stuff because we are looking for long-term tenants. We want our stuff to look really nice, and we want our stuff to last a long time. We plan on keeping these properties for, 100 years. Little old Reining will be 130 with a portfolio. But yeah, we don't skimp on anything. We don't put in the cheapest of the materials. And if we see like contractors putting up like the $50 white ceiling fans from Home Depot, we ask them not to do that. We ask them to get the nicer ones. So, yeah, we definitely want everything to look nice and kind of trendy. A lot of what we've been doing lately for our kitchens is we've been putting in the butcher block cabinet tops or countertops, and those look really nice, and they're pretty economical, pretty cheap. What did starting your insurance company teach you about insuring rentals? Any tips? Yes. It's that I would never, on my personal properties, I would avoid actual cash value at all costs. It taught me that deferred maintenance is not ideal. So insurance companies. So let's say an insurance company sees pictures of a property and it's got like a gutter falling off. Then they would see that as a red flag. And at first, I thought it was silly for them to not write this insurance policy because a gutter was falling off, because it's like a $50 fix and just a couple of nails. But after talking to a lot of underwriters, the reason that this is a red flag is because it's more indicative of the landlord or the property owner and how they treat things that belong to them and their lack of oversight of the property. So I get that in some cases it seems harsh, insurance's rulings, but it largely comes from a massive database of them seeing and insuring and having bad experiences with slumlords. So curb appeal matters for nothing else other than the insurance companies. So avoid actual cash value. Don't allow deferred maintenance to accumulate on your properties. And let's see here. When insurance companies do pay out, they pay out very well. So there's that. And then I would also say that, insurance is one of those things that I know a lot of investors that treat insurance kind of like a commodity and want like the cheapest one and assume that it's all the same. But I'm not saying this because I'm an insurance agent, but I would say an insurance agent and having a good relationship, just like with having a good relationship with your CPA, makes a world of difference. So actual cash value is, hey, Tom, thanks for hopping on here. And we're up to 21 people. That's impressive. Actual cash value. So Insurance is based on the replacement cost. So an insurance policy, what the overarching promise of an insurance company with an insurance policy is, hey, if you experience a loss, we will make you whole right up prior to the time of your loss. So if your house burns down completely, then the insurance company in the insurance policy is just like the generic replacement cost policy. Then inside of that policy, they are promising you like uh like what is it? Like material, same condition right before the time of loss. So if your house was, hand hewn wood with plaster walls everywhere, then the insurance company should give you hand hewn logs and plaster back. Now, if you add like a functional replacement cost, they will put the modern day materials for like plaster. So they would do drywall instead. They would do, just the normal joists and studs and whatnot. So the value of the property has nothing to do with from the insurance perspective. The value of the property or the amount you should insure it for has nothing to do with the market value. It has everything to do with how much it would cost to replace it exactly as it is. So replacement cost policies are the total amount of labor and materials for completely rebuilding a property. So that's why in Dayton, especially, we see where we buy properties for $50,000, but they cost $250,000 to $300,000 to rebuild, especially these homes that were built in like the 20s or whatnot. So a lot of investors don't want to pay $250,000 to $300,000 of replacement cost coverage on their property that they just spent $30,000 on, because all they want to do is be made whole from a financial perspective. And in the event of a loss, they would just tear the property down and rebuild, buy another property across the street or whatever. So most companies don't want to deviate from that replacement cost. If you go to any big box insurance company, they make you insure that property for the estimated replacement cost. You can circumvent this by going actual cash value. What actual cash value is still doesn't have anything to do with the market value, but it has everything to do with the replacement cost estimate minus the depreciation. And the general rule of thumb is 1% per year from like the time built. So if you have a property built up to 50%. So if you have a property built in 1950, then that is of course going to be longer than 50 years ago. So the replacement cost is going to be depreciated by 50%. So if you have a kitchen fire that causes $20,000 worth of damage, that replacement cost policy would pay you $20,000 to replace it and fix everything. The actual cash value policy would pay you $10,000 because it depreciates 50% of the replacement cost. So, and this is still less your deductible. So if you have a $2,500 deductible, the replacement cost policy that would pay out $20,000 would actually pay out $17,500, whereas that actual cash value policy, instead of paying you $10,000, it'll actually pay you $7,500. So actual cash value can leave you holding a big bag, and you should not do it. Replacement cost is where it's at. Now, there are some companies local to Ohio that will allow you, they have their own formula. They will allow you to settle at replacement cost, but insure it for like up to 2 times the purchase price. So if you spend $50,000, they'll give you $100,000 on that property, and they'll still settle it at replacement cost. So if you still have that same kitchen fire, they would pay you $20,000, but you're not paying the premiums on that $250,000 to $300,000 estimated replacement cost. Yeah, man, I'm out in Nashville, Tennessee for the weekend, and Will is here too, but he's playing golf at the moment. He is not here. It would have been dope if he were on here with me though, but that's okay. Good morning. I appreciate it. Thanks, Lisa. And I appreciate your coffee mug. I had the coffee, but I drank it all. It seems like you mostly focus on the lower end houses. Why? Why not the higher end houses? I thought is more safer and less hassle to collect rent. A lot of people bring their baggage to their and a lot of their own assumptions to their rental properties. And I get it. And I have talked to a lot of people that have, A-class properties. I've talked to tons of people that have like D-class properties. Now there's a stark contrast between your A-class property demographic and your D-class. Like D is war zone. I do not think that there is an area inside of Dayton that we invest in that is actually a D area. I do not think the crime in Dayton is that serious. When I say D area, I say like nightly shootings and whatnot. True war zone. No one's safe. Hide your kids, right? It is all a matter of perspective and what type of problems that you want to deal with. If you think just from like a social perspective, if you've got nothing in common with people that might occupy a D, C, or B area, if you could only appropriately socialize with A-class people, then sure, it might be most beneficial for you to focus on high-end properties. However, the high-end people probably, this is me just stereotyping, just making broad assumptions over the types of problems that you would have in A-class properties. You likely won't want everything to the highest of standard, not a very resilient tenant, wanting service immediately. If you can't have a contractor out there within 30 minutes of them complaining, they are going to get very nasty and be an absolute handful. Whereas, a C person might still have the same expectations, but be a lot more lenient on how long it takes you to resolve that issue, right? Sure, you might, in the C areas, you might have an issue where if, their car breaks down, your rent might be late, whereas the A person might always be on time. But they might be an absolute pain to deal with and talk to, especially if they want to complain with you. So it's not so much a matter of which one is more or less of a headache. It's a matter of which problems do you really want to deal with. I wouldn't necessarily say that I focus on lower end properties so much as I say I focus on a particular area of the city. I have a vision of this area 30, 40 years from now that I am house by house enacting. So if, the market were to turn and all of the properties that I'm currently purchasing start selling for 100, 150, 200,000, I'm not going to go, across town and now start building an area or building a portfolio in an area where you could still buy houses for 30,000. I'm actually not much motivated by the price of the house whatsoever. This is just kind of phase one of the rental property portfolio. And, I think we should probably all be very careful on the assumptions that we bring across or expectations that we have. And, I say this as a result of me learning the same situations myself. I mean, when I first got into this, I think I would likely echo the same sentiments. And, I had some experience in law enforcement, and in the back of my head, I had this fear that 100% of the people that rent these properties from us, when I took over management, I just had this massive fear. Like every conversation I have, I had like the worst conversations replay in my head that I ever had in law enforcement. And I brought tons of baggage with me to the property management, and then kind of forecasted them out onto the people that I was going to interact with on a daily basis once I took over property management. And I couldn't have been further from the truth. I would say 98% of people in the world want to do the right thing. They want to pay you, they want to pay their rent on a timely basis. They want to help you maintain the home, and they want to live peacefully inside of the product that you are offering them. So, like most things in the world, I would say hassle is an internal issue with yourself, kind of reality versus expectations. You probably had some false expectations. And I would say that, 99% of the problems that I face on a daily basis are a me problem, not an other people problem. Yes. Absolutely. I've been fighting this my entire life. I remember being in the fourth grade and like practicing facial expressions in the mirror because I got so tired of people asking me why I am angry on a daily basis. And actually, I started going to a chiropractor, and the lady at the front desk thinks that I am sarcastic all the time. And I said, that I am not. I am not sarcastic ever. I think sarcasm is a very cheap humor. And she didn't believe me. There was nothing I could do to convince her of that. Thank you, man. I even took a survey of my friends to make sure that I'm not sarcastic. Sarcasm is very mean. What's your grace period for when you decide to assess late fees? 4 days. So on the 5th, that's when everybody gets paid. Day off or after 5 days. After 5 days. So on the 5th. On the 5th at midnight is when they assess. Appfolio does that. They allow you to set a number of grace period days. I think you've answered this question before, but on average, how many hours per week are you still dealing with tenant issues? I would say less than 4. I think it's increased since like the last time I answered this and the last time I really thought about it was when we had around 80 properties. I would say now we have like 130 to 131. I'm not sure if that one property that we're closing on today has closed. So, it's kind of different buckets. And I would say on the maintenance side, like handling work orders, probably less than 4 hours a week. Now, like the acquisitions, just the miscellaneous issues that have nothing to do with like the maintenance sides of the properties. Yeah. I don't know. Let me think about that. I would say 4, but I'm gonna monitor it over the next couple of weeks and get a better answer on that. Are any areas on the west side of Dayton you invest in or recommend? I've got a couple properties near DeSoto Bass. You should invest near DeSoto Bass. DeSoto Bass is an up and coming area. Are you going to any conferences this year? I've already been to about all the conferences I can handle. After I get home from this conference, I am going to stay in Dayton and not travel outside of Dayton in a very long time. I'm a homebody, man. I like to have my own regular space and not go to conferences. Oh, but we've been to a few good ones, but I'm not going anymore. You know what, though? I think if you really twisted my arm, you could probably convince me to go to Appfolio's conference if they're putting it on. I would just really be curious as to what kind of people show up to that and how other people interact with Appfolio. I'm pretty sure Appfolio has a lot more features and is capable of doing a lot more than we are allowing. All right. Well, we've been going for an hour and 37 minutes. Anybody have any questions? If not, I think this is about a good time to go ahead and call it a day. We've got 20 people on, though, 18 now. So still a lot of people. So if you all have questions, let's get those bad boys answered. If not, I'm going to go ahead and say see you guys next week. Go hit some golf balls. I don't do that. I let my brother do all that for me. And I'm really excited. My brother lives in Jacksonville, Florida, and we don't necessarily spend too much time together in person, actually in physical. We talk for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, but it's fun. All right, everybody. Hey, check out PropStream. Click that link for your 7-day free trial. They're going to get you on the 8th, though. And then let's see here. What else? Next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which right now I'm on Central. It's really throwing me off. So my clock says 8:35 a.m. That's not correct. So I will see you all next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube. Let's see here. The Wealthy Gardener. Let me get you a link for that, because The Wealthy Gardener, I would say, is probably my new favorite book. I think that's probably the most awesome book written in like the past decade for like personal development, self-improvement, or whatnot. And then the other book that I would recommend is Building Wealth One House at a Time. Now, keep in mind, I'm a huge fan of, I just put the link to The Wealthy Gardener in the chat. I prefer single family homes, and I think Building Wealth One House at a Time by Jay Schwab is a phenomenal book, and really shows you and does a good job painting the picture of, if you are investing in real estate, especially single family homes, and you truly have your 30 to 40 year goggles on, it is almost impossible to screw up. You have to be grossly negligent to make any long-term lasting mistakes that you cannot recover from. And most people, especially those on this chat or actively looking for real estate information from YouTube, you're probably not going to be grossly negligent in your own personal portfolio. Alrighty, everybody. I appreciate it. Hey, peace for all. Thanks for asking that question. Get a copy of The Wealthy Gardener, and I've actually, I'm very happy to say that I've become pretty good friends with the author of that book. He's a very, very awesome guy. So let me know what you think about it. And I will see you all next week on Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. See you, everybody.